Welcome to the Lassoing Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Rogers.
And I'm Garth Nichols. And in this podcast, we aim for no more than 20 minutes per episode where we get to talk about our favorite characters of the hit TV show, Ted Lasso, leadership nuggets of gold. And we even take a stab at renaming each episode just for fun. And then we leave you with a leadership challenge based on our learnings.
And we're in season 2, if you can believe it, where we talk about all things Ted Lasso and leadership. And we're sharing our mic with others too. And today, I am pleased to be, in the studio with Dr. Claire Kelly, Assistant Head Student Life at Appleby College in Oakville, Ontario. Claire, let me be the first to welcome you to the show. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much, Jason, for having me on. It's such a pleasure to be here. I love Ted Lasso, and I love this Lassoing Leadership podcast. And I wish I had thought of it myself, but I'm delighted to be here and be your guest. And I love what you're doing. So thank you.
That's great.
Well, Claire, before we get too far into it, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, about your role, and how you came to being on the podcast with us?
Sure. Well, I have worked in leadership for, I guess, through my PhD for the last 10 years or so. And in my new role, or relatively new role, I've been in Assistant Head Student Life at Appleby College for 3 years now. And I work closely with student leadership and providing opportunities for students to understand themselves and to try new things and to seek opportunities, to find that authenticity that we also crave, and to find, new, to be innovative in the way they go about shaping the world. So it's pretty neat to be able to be part of your podcast today and to be able to talk a little bit more about leadership. In my spare time too, I do work with Garth and yourself in different ways through the Case Leadership Institute, teaching modules, and I've worked with the Women in Leadership module there for the last 5 seasons.
Yeah, and when you reached out to us, you wanted to talk a little bit more about the show through the lens of the female perspective. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, thank you. That was one of my original reasons for reaching out, because I find the show really interesting from that. It has a lot of strong females, and I think the characters are really well drawn in that there are different perspectives on feminism through the female leads, but also through the male leads, of course. But between Rebecca and Keely and even Sharon Fieldstone, we have different feminist takes as well, and different ways of leading.
Love it. Well, thanks for being on the show. And we often we love to hear from people like you, Claire, who listen to the show. Jason, any updates on listener feedback from you?
Well, I just want to take a moment and shout out several of our former guests, Keith, Virgil, Kathy today. Their episodes are now 4 of our top 5 episodes of all time. I can hardly wait to hear what we hear from this episode. So needless to say, I'm pretty excited to have Claire here. And Garth, I'm always curious as to what you're hearing from listeners out there.
Yeah, we had a bonus episode released over the winter holidays, and it was with our senior basketball team, and it was great. And the feedback we've been getting from some of the students, even over the holidays, has been great. Listening to the episode, they were like, "Oh yeah, there are other forms of leadership going on inside a sports team," because our students identified, they have these roles as prefects in our school, but also they identified that there were other roles of leadership that they play on the team. And so it was great to hear that feedback. That and Claire, you work, as you said, you work with student leadership. To be able to be young and see yourself as a leader, not in a formal, recognized portfolio or role in your school, I think is one of the most valuable things we can show our students. So that feedback was really meaningful for me. Let's move on. Jason, hit us with the summary. You're going to do the summary this week.
I will, but before I do that, I want to shout out to basketball players, because we've now gone from 1% to 5% of our listeners are under the age of 20. So I think congratulations, another win for Coach Nichols' basketball team. So anyways,
thanks, buddy.
Here we go. Yeah, so let's get on with it. Here's a summary. And I love this episode, so I've got a few points I want to make. Nate opens this episode by wanting to take his parents for a nice dinner to celebrate their anniversary. He wants to take them to a local restaurant and get the very best table, the one in the window, but he struggles to be assertive. Isaac McAdoo is struggling with his new leadership role. He's a wigwam in a TP, as Ted says it. He's too tense. Rebecca is starting to date again, exploring online dating apps. She asks Higgins how he branded himself when he met his wife, and he says, just be yourself, Rebecca. Rebecca and Keely give Nate some lesson in building self-confidence and assertion in a magical moment when Rebecca shows how she makes herself big. Ted tries to talk Roy into coming back as a coach, but of course Roy says, F no. But Roy agrees to help Isaac get out of his own head. Roy takes Isaac to his childhood soccer pitch and he reminds Isaac that playing the game he loves should be fun. And there's clearly some incredible moments that happen there. Nate eventually takes his parents for dinner, and after getting a bit of a pump-up session for himself in the bathroom, he manages to get his parents that window table. And after seeing the impact on Isaac and a last-ditch attempt by Ted to get Roy back to coaching, Roy Kent agrees to coach. There's a lot in that episode, and I can't wait to break down with Garth and Claire. So, Garth, how'd I do?
Yeah, that is great. I mean, you capture some of the key moments and the key players in those moments. So I love it. There's some great things in here that Claire will pick up on. So, Claire, let's jump in. We'd love to hear from you. Who is your favorite character in this episode?
That is such a difficult question because I love so many of the characters in Ted Lasso, the series. In this episode, I'm going to go with Keely. And I know she's been talked about a little bit before on the broadcast. So I was also toying a bit with Roy. And
of course,
I'm starting to like, yeah, I know. He is just always amazing. But I'm also starting to like Rebecca more. And I think, each of these characters begins as an archetype and a little shallow in season 1. And I think Keely really rounds out early, then Rebecca, and then ultimately Roy. And I like, even though Keely I said is my favorite, I want to talk a little bit about Rebecca. I like that she's becoming more human. In her last episode, I guess that was the number 4, she was elfing, she was delivering gifts, she was thinking of others, like being empathetic, showing a very different kind of leadership. And I think the way she was thinking about Ted really made her much more human. And she's not really my leadership style, but I really like the development of her character from what starts off as a villain to a very complex lead. I also learned she's a singer, which is amazing, and she has this whole other show. She's a very famous actor in certainly on Broadway and in England, and that was I didn't know her as anything other than Game of Thrones, so that was a revelation for me. I also like that that Keely is such a truth teller. She talks, she's got X-ray vision. Like she sees through, she finds the best in everyone and she's able to call it out. So here she calls out Rebecca for being shy, Rebecca. We've never seen that before. And I thought that was really fabulous. So yeah, going back to my favorite, definitely Keely, but I really like some of the others in the way that they develop.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pile on with you here because I love Keely in this episode. And I love her in this episode. And I was prompted to think about this through the lens of, why you wanted to come on the show, Claire. She is constantly fighting against the trope of, women fighting against each other in positions of leadership, which is what we see a lot of in television. It's a very common script.
Absolutely.
And Rebecca and Keely do a very good job of showing an effective, nurturing relationship of peers in the workplace as two women. And so for me, in particular, when she calls out Rebecca on Rebecca's privilege of, having money and wealth, and she says, no, Rebecca, come on, give him some more advice. And she says, the saying, says Keely, you buy the man a table and he eat once. You teach a man how to get a table and he eats at that restaurant until it becomes a Starbucks. And then, it works out. But she's just calling on Rebecca, help him out. And she has the ability to do that. And in this episode, she also sort of says to Nate, like, you can't have one of those coffee machines. They're only for the players, and recognizes that Nate wants something different. So I really appreciate her advice in this. Jason, who is it for you? I ask naively.
I feel like I have to go with Keely. Just kidding.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to fall to the podcast peer pressure, which you both put me under. I'm sticking with Roy Kent for lots of reasons. This is one of Roy's best episodes, although I feel like I say that each and every week. But I love to see Roy step into formal leadership role and get Isaac out of his own head. And, in doing this, we see Roy get out of his own head as well. It's about a bit of a mutual benefit here. But back to Roy taking Isaac to his childhood home, his soccer pitch, we see him reshape, and reshare the joy of sport with Isaac. Isaac has lost this, and Roy quickly picks up on that. And we know that if we don't have joy in the work that we do, the joy in the leadership we do, we don't have purpose. These things just can't come together for us. And I think Roy intuitively, instinctively knows this, and it makes all the difference for Isaac. And in the end, Roy makes a big decision. He talks through it on air as to why he's making this decision. While he's sitting there in the commentator booth, he says, we, guess at what they're going to do, and then we get upset that we're wrong when they don't do the thing. We have no opportunity to impact them. We have no opportunity to see how they're feeling, be with them, share words, share experiences. I need that. And in that moment, he leaves the broadcast booth and he heads back to his coaching role at the team. And his development and his ability to talk through that, I think we see him as a stubborn, gruff, non-emotionally intelligent individual. But in these moments, you can clearly see he's processing. You can see he's emotionally intelligent, that he's working through, and that he is a true leader of that team. So absolutely loved that. So There you go.
Nice. Let's jump in. Claire, what did you see as a leadership lesson in this episode?
Well, I thought that each lead learns something about themselves from another's insights. So whether it was Roy from Ted or Isaac from Roy, Rebecca from Keely, I think it's really important to surround yourself with different voices and different people, and maybe even, definitely different perspectives, as we've spoken about, but there's a sense of a generational thing here too. I really liked what you spoke about with the sisterhood between, or the true sisterhood, if you will, between Rebecca and Keely, Garth. And I think they bring out the best in each other. And I love that compliment, and they're juxtaposed, but they complement each other so well. I love that Keely is able to remind Rebecca that she needs to self-promote, and be your best brand. Being one of the motifs that runs through the episode is being yourself is the best brand. And Keely's kind of figured that out really quickly. You see that through her fashion, through her bold choices, through her curiosity. Rebecca's taken a long time to figure that one out, and so have some others. And I think touching on kind of what Jason said as well, I think you see that with Roy once he's sitting in the broadcast booth, and he's trying really hard to be that authentic Roy. And when he calls out his peers for their lack of connection and their judgment, I think you're seeing a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, I struggled with this episode as well in terms of people learning from other people. Tell us a little bit about, what do you see as a recipe of surrounding yourself with, like, getting that really good balance of surrounding yourself with different perspectives, but being able to still move forward together?
If we look back at what Nate was doing, what I noticed in this episode is that Nate feels that he's left on the outside, and he turns to Keely and then to Rebecca to set himself right. He tells Keely his deepest desire is to be famous and to please his hard-to-please father. But he also really wants to he wants to have enough power to be able to do the things that he needs to do. So he turns to Keely for help to be assertive. And this really backfires initially because Nate is really not open for their support. So we see like a few other things in the episode as Nate is trying to figure this out. He's really, he's almost invisible at times. He has very little voice.
Mhm.
He is Ted literally gives him an inside whistle, and as Jason said, the coffee machines are only for the players. So part of the leadership lesson is to be attuned to what the ambitions and drives are for your for the people that you work with as a leader, and to make sure that you're nurturing. I think one of the things that that is really a leader should be attuned to how best to support the people who are working with them. Like Virgil Hill commented 2 episodes ago, the role of the leader is to develop other leaders and to ensure that if they leave the organization, they won't fall apart. And I think what the writers might be using Nate's character to explore and expose are flaws in Ted's leadership, and perhaps foreshadowing things to come. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah. Well, Claire, I love that because I think you hit on a couple things. One is authenticity. So being true to yourself in leadership. And I think, Garth, when I think about your basketball players we talked to the other day, is like helping them find their true authentic selves in leadership through what they understand to be great leadership. So that's really the first thing. And secondly is that development of leadership over time. And I see that, in these instances, Nate is wanting more. He wants to be a bigger part. At one point, Ted jokingly says, Isaac's only going to respond to a big dog. And Nate says, that's me. I'll do that. And then Ted laughs and says, no, I guess you're serious, Nate. But there's a bridge, there's a gap that needs to be bridged there between who Nate thinks he is and who Nate wants to be, and where Ted sees him on that spectrum. And I think, and I think helping people develop that over time and develop mastery in their leadership is a really important part of the process. And first of all, the mentee has to be open to it, and the mentor has to be aware of it. And I'm not sure that's happening here. Like, I don't think Ted and Nate are totally in sync there. And I think that's a harbinger of things to come in the next little bit here.
I think if I could just jump in, I think too, this idea of knowing the aspirations of the people that you lead is really important, but also giving the people who are moving through, into leadership, they know why they want to be in that position of leadership. Fair. Because this episode for me has me really questioning why Nate wants to be a leader. What does it mean to be a big dog? What does it mean to be famous? And I think that's really significant. And we're starting to see this. And both of you have pointed out that this is like a harbinger of things to come, a little bit of foreshadowing for sure. And I'm always questioning, like, what if Ted Lasso didn't laugh it off, but followed up with Nate and said, what does it mean for you to be a big dog? How would you have approached Isaac McAdoo in that moment? A little bit more mentoring, I think, would have been good. But listen, let's jump in. Claire, if you could rename this episode, what would you rename it?
Well, I think I've gone back and forth on so many different things on this one. It ends at "You had me at coach," as Roy finally says. I think that's the last line in the full
throwback to Jerry Maguire, I think. Right?
Absolutely, and I think that's really effective. Touches on all the fairy tales, the rom-com, all those motifs that run through. I also really liked the idea of finding Jade, or Jade and the Dragon, and the reason I came up with that is because it starts with Jade. There's a lot about Nate here. There's a lot of development of Nate. There's the Jade anniversary. There's a double entendre there with Jade, and literally, there's a win there for Nate in the restaurant with Jade, and it touches on the Rilke quote that Rebecca offered, which was your. Oh, let me see. Where is it? Our fears are guarding our greatest treasure, or something to that. Which I thought was kind of, you have to slay the dragon. You have to get in there and slay the dragon. So either finding Jade or Jade and the dragon would probably be my preference. But
I love those.
And I have a third, actually.
Go for it.
Shadow boxing, which was really a comment on the shadow self. and maybe commenting on Nate's development.
Love that.
Nice.
That's super sharp. Shadow
I love
boxing.
I love that you picked up on the dragon motif too, because that's a great thread running through this episode. I love
what
it.
about you?
Well, Jason, you and I keep going back and forth about this, the significance of the soundtrack here.
Love
so
it.
I would offer the title of this episode to be Blur. Their song entitled Song 2 is one of the 4 songs played on the episode, not many in this episode. And I love the idea that some of the characters are in a blur or emerging out of like a blurry state, like Nate, for example. The lyrics of the song also speak to me because we learn more about Nate's upbringing too, right? He says, the lyrics are, "I got my head done when I was young." And also another lyric is, "all of the time, but I'm never sure why I need you." And I don't know, there's something in there about mentoring. There's something in there about like relationships. So it's not as good as Claire's, any of them, but I offer Blur. What about you, Jason?
I can't top either of them, but I'll offer do what you love and love what you do. And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. Is we talk often about how do we sustain ourselves in leadership, how do we sustain others or get them inspired, and I think it comes down to love. And I think in this soundtrack we see that in the name of the title actually as well. So do what you love and love what you do, Garth.
All right. Yeah, I think one of yours has to win. Claire,
thank you.
Speaking of winning,
I have a guest privilege.
Speaking of winning, what is a challenge to help us and our listeners win in leadership that's inspired by this episode? What could we leave our listeners with?
Yeah, it reminded me of that quote. What if we? I always thought it was Laszlo Bach, but I don't think it is. I think it's just an internet quote. What happens if we invest in developing our people and then they leave us? And then the response, what happens if they don't and they stay? Which I think are both true in this, in Ted Lasso as a whole. Maybe not right in this season, but ultimately, no spoilers.
So what's your challenge? Invest in our people?
Yeah, so the challenge is to invest in our people, to help them find their authenticity, to really work on that mentor-mentee relationship that both you and Jason mentioned.
I love it. Great. Challenge is accepted. Jason, do you accept the challenge?
Accepted. Can't wait to get into it.
Claire, thank you so much for coming on to this show. We loved everything you had to say. And we'd love to hear what other people have learned from episode 11 too. A reminder that if you like what you've heard, rate the podcast, share it with your friends, because if there's any way we're going to get Sudeikis on this show, it's going to be through a massive group effort to slay that dragon.
Amazing.
And with that, Claire, can you take us home?
Sure. Until next time, keep leading the Lasso way.
Thanks,
right,
everybody.
Thanks, everybody.